Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the RedShirt Podcast. Today I'm coming to you from McLaughlin, South Dakota, here in Standing Rock's Bear Soldier District, where I have the honor of sitting down with Chairwoman Bobbi Jamerson. Bobbi, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking about the progress happening here, especially the work you're doing to build both immediate solutions and long-term infrastructure for your community. But before we dive into that, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you came into that role, helping lead these kinds of meaningful changes for the Bear Soldier District.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Good morning. Day out there to everybody. Like Jonathan said, my name is Bobbi Jamerson. I am the district chairwoman here on the Standing Rock Reservation. Bear Soldier is one of 8 districts here on the Standing Rock Reservation in North and South Dakota. We are the largest district on the South Dakota side, more or less. We have a state line that kind of splits our reservation in half. So there's 5 districts on the south side, 3 on the north, and Bear Soldier is the kind of the center, the hub of the South Dakota side. We're the largest in population. I have about 1,000 district members that I am charged with the responsibility to provide and protect. A little bit about myself. I am an enrolled member of the Standing Rock Reservation. I am 30 years old and a U.S. Army veteran. I grew up in this district, my home district of Bear Soldier, from my entire childhood. When I went to school here at the local school, McLaughlin High School, where I graduated in 2013 and went into the U.S. Army a couple months later, where I served in the U.S. Army during active duty time for 8 years. And then in 2022, I came back home immediately and kind of took a year to observe, understand, as an adult, what it is to live on a reservation and understanding tribal government and just the people, or my people again, and, reconnecting to our culture and kind of like our history, more or less. And I started out by a couple different jobs with our entities and, again, learning different sectors of professions at the casino, for instance, and then Sage Development Authority, our tribal charter for renewable energy projects and an energy company, more or less. And then I went to school at our college, Sitting Bull College here. I continued my education where I took many tribal Native American study classes, kind of learning a little bit more about our history and, how we came to be here on the Standing Rock Reservation. And throughout all that, it just motivated me to get involved. Like I said, growing up in the U.S. Army, I learned a lot early on regarding leadership. And then coming back home, I kind of learned how to translate that foundation into Lakota leadership. And, just sitting around, I started getting more involved in my local district, trying to figure out how change can happen and understanding that does start at your community level first and foremost. So I got involved at the district level and I've just kind of been here since. I've been involved in my district for about 2 years now. I was the vice chairwoman, and now I currently serve in the capacity as the district chairwoman. I'm in a very unique role right now. Not only am I the district chairwoman, but I'm also the communications and public relations manager for the tribe itself under the newly elected Sitting Bear administration. So it's been a great learning experience in these new roles for a little over 4 months now. And what I'm doing currently is trying to utilize both these roles to the people's advantage, building and fostering relationships with organizations such as yourself and Western Hemisphere Indigenous Network. It's WIN. Yep, that's how I remember it, WIN. And then of course Seeds of Eden, Isaiah here, where we've been through a lot. Isaiah is one of the first partnerships and organizations that really kind of I grasped to, because as I started navigating in my district, I realized, our issues that the community faces. And unfortunately, many of those issues, there's a root or a commonality between them of substance abuse and addiction and no opportunities or limited resources, so on and so forth. So I met Isaiah about 2 years ago in the treatment realm, and I just really appreciated their programming. What sold me and I guess kind of captured me the most was their leadership foundation and kind of how their programming was also centered around leadership. That kind of spoke the language that I'm used to. So we've been trying to make some moves in the district and amongst the community for about a year now, and I think we're finally in the space and the time, and we are in the network or in the relationships that are going to be able to allow us to do some very impactful things here in the district, and I'm very excited. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a lot of work that's been put in. Just coming out of the military, it must have been just like kind of like a culture clash with
oh
the
my gosh,
leadership
it definitely was a culture shock, but thankfully I'm well trained for that too. I did also combat deploy during my time during COVID, so the Army does a good job in training you on and exposing you to, you know, different things, different cultures, different systems, different people. So it's something that it made me want to get involved with the people more, to understand at the people level and have those conversations. But it ultimately made me, more than anything, kind of ground myself in our traditions and our culture and our language, and learning those things. What I realized is it's a standard ultimately that our people, our ancestors used to be. And I think the work that we do, especially with WIN, is we're trying to bring that standard back, because somewhere along the line it was lost or kind of been misinterpreted, you know? So yeah, it's been an interesting journey for sure, but I would do it all again. I'm very excited, and I'm more than willing to do the work, the hard work, have the hard conversations. And we're at a point now where the people want those things too. They want to be a part of that work. They want to have the hard conversation. And yeah, I'm excited.
Before we get into that broader conversation about the district, I want to bring in Isaiah and have you introduce yourself, introduce Seeds of Eden. Seeds of Eden's been working alongside the district through their own mental health configuration for the community, connecting land-based work with healing and mental wellness. Isaiah, for listeners who may not be familiar with your work, can you briefly share your role with how Seeds of Eden became involved with this work? I know Bobbi already kind of filled this in with a little bit, but...
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of these discussions, and it's just been an incredible journey from kind of a grassroots level. It's kind of where all of this really started. For me personally, I've been in recovery about 11 years. You know, I came out of a pretty severe addiction, 10 years basically long. Started drinking when I was 14 years old, and you know, by the time I was graduated, I was a full-blown alcoholic. Into college and into my career, worked in the oil and gas industry for quite some time. You know, it escalated into hard drugs, opioids, stimulants, you name it. So for me, it was kind of a traumatic journey that brought me to where I'm at now, having survived drug overdoses, at least one that I know of, and stabbing and different things like that. So I'm just thankful to be alive and thankful to be able to contribute, you know, some of the talents and skills that I've been given for this type of work. So I worked in behavioral health. I've been working in behavioral health for about 10 years. Did a lot of work with youth at a treatment level, like the Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch. Very quickly kind of rose to leadership there. Tried to make an impact where I could. And then from there, I wanted to do kind of my own type of model, which led me to start Seeds of Eden. So I'm one of the co-founders. We've been around for approximately 3 years now. When I originally started, the vision was just to help my local community. So I live in Minot, North Dakota. So that's our neighbor to the north. And I say that because that's really where I intended to operate. But about 6 months in, I recognize the need to get involved with tribal communities. And I've always been an ally. I've always been, you know, an advocate, but I realized that there was something bigger that I needed to get involved with. So for me, I've always had a mindset of collaboration. I realized really quickly, you could say that this problem with opioids and drug addiction and mental health challenges and trauma and all of this stuff is way bigger than one entity. It's bigger than one person can handle. So anyone who thinks they can tackle it alone, or you know they've got all the answers, is really delusional. And so we begin to make trips, pretty intentional trips, coming down to Standing Rock. It was through relationships that I had built with some Indigenous members here in Standing Rock. And so it was basically an invitation. And that's kind of where I took that invitation really seriously. And so that led me to connect with the treatment center, tribal leaders on various levels. And so this was very much an organic type of situation. So we've been working within Standing Rock for approximately 2 years, intentionally, and with services, professional services. We've done a lot of work, and we've made a lot of progress. And I think that, as much as we've done, it's only scratched the surface, because when you look at the scale of the issue, it's on such a deep and high degree. And so, kind of what we're working on right now, honestly, is to develop the niche that we're really good and skilled in, and that's sober living homes. We've done peer support, we've done case management, we've done crisis intervention, and we'll be doing some of that as well. But we really want to establish safe structures for people to heal in and to grow and to thrive in their own community. We realize that, for some people, they need to be maybe sent to a place far away to get treatment. And that's fine and that's great. It's not long-term, though. So when people come back, they need a place to continue that recovery journey. And for some people, when we talk about especially Indigenous culture, we should be able to heal communities. That should be a huge part of our lifestyle, and anyone that's going through recovery. So we want to establish that. As of right now, there are no sober living homes in Standing Rock in any of the districts. We have a very good treatment team that does their very best, and we're excited to partner with them on these initiatives. But as of right now, we're moving forward with the home that we have earmarked. It's been remodeled. We've put in the money and the time with this project, and we're excited because it's going to be truly an organic plant. I mean, it's really going to be something. But we wanted to make sure that we had food sovereignty gardens, food sovereignty program paired with the recovery home, because we know that we heal through working with our hands, through working with the soil, working through the food that should be our medicine. In my background of faith, that's a huge deal. And I believe health and wellness should be a vital part of recovery. So yeah, I have a lot to say, Jonathan, but I just wanted to just mention a couple of those highlights as we're making our intros. So thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. I really appreciate that. And especially with all the leadership that we're working with, we've all seemingly been through, this struggle that we're trying to fix right now together. And I think that's like a big part that a lot of, in the past, a lot of the structure came from people who didn't go through those processes. So they didn't understand what they were working with. And then that's when you get programming that doesn't really make sense, or it doesn't turn into any measurable impact. So before we get into a lot of the details, for many of the listeners, Standing Rock is somewhere where they've only heard that through the the news with the DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline. A lot of people know that Sitting Bull is from here. But the Bear Shoulder District is a living community with real strengths, pressures, and responsibilities shaping everyday life. So Bobbi, can you share what life is really like here today, and what are some of the biggest challenges your people are navigating right now? I know we went through that a little bit, but if you want to go through that kind of in detail so the listener can see what the state is like here in Standing Rock.
I think if I were to describe what it's like living here on Standing Rock, or in Bear Soldier specifically, is survival. That's pretty much it. I think that's the best way to say it. My people go day to day just trying to get through that day, more or less. So living here in Bear Soldier specifically, it's interesting because, like I said, I grew up in this district throughout my entire childhood. And to see the difference now it's crazy. When I grew up, this town was like booming, literally. And the district was also holding their own, more or less, in that. So this community specifically, when we talk about Bear Soldier, we often refer it to as Bear Soldier McLaughlin. So we share this community with the city of McLaughlin, South Dakota. And so it's always... historically, it was always like city side non-natives versus tribal members, and those boundaries were always strictly kind of enforced. People stayed in their boundaries, more or less, or on their side. Around the community, the town, it's an agricultural hub. We have a ethanol plant up here. There is an ethanol plant up here, Integra. And around the community is just fields to grow ag, mainly corn for ethanol and whatnot. And it's kind of that age-old story of, surprisingly, one of my district members said it a lot better than I could. We were talking about the land the other day, and he was saying that the cows have better access to our lands than our own tribal members. And it's just because, there's a lot of agricultural business that go on around our community in this town, but it's not necessarily tribal members that are leading that or involved or benefiting from it, to say the least. So in this town right now, in the district, we don't have nearly as much things as used to exist. I think maybe a big portion of that was the non-native communities, really being engaged in their town, and creating business. Well, now it's completely changed. So growing up, I'd say ratio would have been like maybe 50-50 of tribal versus non-native or non-members, and now it's completely like 80-20 of tribal members. So we ultimately make up this community, and we weren't historically these past couple of years. It's not been very proactive, though. Even though we make up the majority now, we're not really proactive on our side. So that's the goal for me coming in, and what I can do these next 4 years for my community and members is try to provide for them opportunities and resources, because living here, it's mainly just houses, a lot of boarded up vacant houses as well. We do face a housing issue here on Standing Rock, across Standing Rock, but here in the city of McLaughlin, Bear Soldier, there's not a lot of opportunity for employment, more or less. There's not a lot of opportunity for outlets. There is, alcohol establishments. We used to have 2. The city closed theirs down as an olive branch, and that has definitely helped out a lot, because the city was tired of, seeing that too, and figuring out how they can help help solve be a part of the solution, not the problem. So, now, I also sit on the city council as the tribal liaison, more or less, for the council. And we've done a complete 180 of trying to rebuild a relationship, and a meaningful one. So it's been good. It's been a lot of collaboration amongst the city and the district on how we're going to move forward together, because we live amongst each other. So I'm very excited, because, again, that's not how it's always been historically. Like Jonathan said, this is when you think of Standing Rock, you think of Sitting Bull's people, like they said. In our town specifically, Bear Soldier, McLaughlin, has a lot with that history. I mean, this town was named after Major James McLaughlin, and that was Sitting Bull's, enemy, if you want to say. So today, if you go into the city hall where they host their city council meetings, literally on the wall, there's a portrait of Major James McLaughlin, and right next to it is a portrait of Sitting Bull. Right there. I was taken back when I first walked in there. I'm like, what? Okay, this is interesting. And then right down the street from my house is Major James McLaughlin's old house. So for me, doing this work in my community, it's a lot more than just providing and protecting my people. It's about also kind of balancing the scales, and I feel like we're in a full circle moment right now, and we're going to do it a different way. Whenever McLaughlin was established and the non-natives initially came here, it was out of, forced upon us. Well, now I'm at it where it's a stance of okay, we all live together, and we're going to do it differently this time, because we can coexist and co-live together. It don't have to be a forced relationship, but both parties and both populations more or less need to benefit together, not one over the other, where that's how it's been historically. So right now, going back to the question though, there's really not a lot here. We don't have a lot of business. We have a grocery store, a post office, a tribally owned gas station, some churches, a school, but like there's nothing. We have one main street, more or less, for the listeners. Like it's a small community, but it's big enough. And there's a lot of potential here. Like I said, we're the agricultural economic hub for the South Dakota side of Standing Rock, and we have a lot of land here on Standing Rock, ag land, that kind of hasn't really been, we've never really utilized it to see its full potential. And that's where we're at now is, as I mentioned before, we have a newly elected chairman. He's been in 4 months now, and he has a big push on, Standing Rock first, utilizing our lands to our advantage. Majority of Standing Rock is kind of like underdeveloped, but I say that in a good way, because we have the opportunity to develop the way that we want to see. And the biggest push right now is food sovereignty and how we can provide for ourselves here on Standing Rock. So in the town, there's also a railroad that goes it's like right here. It goes right through the town of McLaughlin. So I see a lot of potential, and I'm very excited to see how kind of large we can get this program going. I think it'll definitely take off. Right now, food sovereignty is a huge topic all over Standing Rock, and here in Bear Soldier, historically, we've always led amongst the districts, and that's what we're looking to do right now. Lead and build those meaningful relationships, not only amongst the other districts that we share this space with, that we call home, but with outside organizations and entities.
That's exactly where it needs to start, is the unity between, organizations, community, especially when the community was split for so long. And now, you're right. You're in a good position to kind of be like, we have, we're on the foundation level, and then we can build up from here. And you don't really have all, like if the Native community is the majority now, you do have a better opportunity for the Native voice to be here actually. And then maybe even possibly talk about changing the name to Sitting Bull.
Yeah, there's been actual, it's been proposed multiple times, a name change for the city of McLaughlin. So we'll see. I kind of don't lean either way. I kind of like it because I like the irony in it. Yeah. And so now if we can do what we plan to do, and kind of, I wouldn't say leave the location better than the way we got it, or how we inherited it. That's kind of the goal, and like I said, kind of the irony of it is,
And it's a new age where it's, you do have agricultural, like a company here who's sharing the space. You have the city that's sharing the space, the states, that's around. So it's like you can't do everything you want to do, but I think you're in a position now where you're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, definitely just chipping away at continuing to build those relationships. Because like I said, what I've noticed is kind of the non-natives here are the ones that actually want to be here. And our common ground that I've seen is truly the respect for the land. They want to have that land, for their families, and they want to pass it on, so let's take care of it together. Let's work it to our benefit together and respect it, so. Yeah,
and that's perfect for what we're doing with the Planet Project, because, working alongside with partners like Seeds of Eden through that project, we're growing recognition that land-based work supports not just food access, but mental wellness and cultural reconnection for everyone. For the Native community, cultural reconnection is important because our language is connected to it, our land, our history. But we don't think about the non-Indigenous community who also needs their culture. We got to think about how, pre-1800s, a lot of these people who are here right now, they were in Minnesota or they were overseas in their original countries. So really, when it comes down to it, this journey back to the land and back to food sovereignty and getting our hands in the dirt is going to bring the best out of everyone, because really those are our ancestors. So as we're working alongside, Seeds of Eden, with mental health, cultural reconnection, Isaiah, from your work with Seeds of Eden, how do you see land-based initiatives contributing to healing and balance?
Well, I think for me, it hits pretty personal, because my great-grandpa homesteaded near Minot back in 1908, something like that. And in fact, he deserted the Russian army. He snuck over on a boat to provide a better life for himself, his soon-coming wife, and he may have been actually married at that time, but his kids that he would have here in America. So he started farming, and I mean, that's exactly what he was practicing, is food sovereignty, back in those days. And I mean, this has only been recently that we've become so dependent on these big pharma and these false systems of security, but much of the nation was very sovereign in their food practices, probably well into the 60s and 70s. So we need to go back. We need to go back in time, but do it in a better way. And I think, as things change, we're not living in 1920 anymore, but we are living in a day where people still need healthy, good quality, affordable food. And it's really strange because you can just grow it. It's actually very easy to do, but we've made it so complicated because honestly, we've stopped thinking critically and we've gotten lazy. Just as a nation, just as a population in general. So if we can reclaim that and begin on kind of a smaller scale, right? But then lead into a larger scale, which is totally doable. But we really want to get the blueprint and the pattern down. And that's why I really appreciate, your connections in business and in advocacy, partnering with Bear Soldier District to really bring about what we can see on a smaller scale and on a larger scale, food sovereignty and food responsibility. So for me, it hits home just because I grew up on a farm. My dad farmed. His dad farmed. His grandpa farmed. The farm that is still in existence now is a 5th generation family farm. So we take that very seriously. And I just want to see communities healthy. I want to see families be able to eat the foods that are native to them, are culturally relevant to them. And most of what we find now in the store is this processed food that our body is actually rejecting. And because of that, disease and cancer and all sorts of stuff is just out of control. It's rampant. And the government's not going to fix it. The government doesn't want to fix it. And so we really have to take matters into our own hands. And that's where I'm really connecting with the activism and the advocacy part of it. Because if someone doesn't do it, like we've just recently noticed with the SNAP crisis, it's going to be, people are going to die if we don't establish these systems and these initiatives. So it's much bigger than just having a community garden and everyone's, admiring that. And those are really cool, but it's much, much bigger than that. It's much more complex. So yeah, it takes a village to raise a child. And one thing that I've admired about this community is, and some people who may not be familiar with McLaughlin and the Bear Soldier District, they may think that it's dying or it's declining. But here's the thing: wherever there's kids and there's children, there's life, and there is a ton of youth, a ton of kids that are here. And the school is, I believe it's a Class A school. There's a lot of people in this community, but then also around the community, there's a lot of other micro communities that depend on what happens in McLaughlin. So it's not just, our own families and our own people that are living here, but it's the communities around that are depending. And they're looking to, Bobbi Jamerson, they're looking to other leaders in the community as a way to model and as a way to pattern. So yeah, our actions affect more than just ourselves.
And like you said, the sovereignty, unfortunately, food sovereignty, it kind of got political. The crony capitalism got a hold of it. Very rich people got a hold of it and kind of started gatekeeping it. And in that process, we lost the ability to realize that we could just be doing all that in our own backyards. So the community feeding itself is really the next step towards sovereignty, towards mental health, and towards community really taking hold of itself and becoming self-sufficient. Bobbi, can a nation truly be sovereign without control over its food system? And what would food sovereignty look like in Bear Soldier District? I know we talked about the local grocery store possibly being in your hands eventually here, a distribution center. Does Bear Soldier District have the ability to do that? And what does that look like in the long run?
Well, to answer the first question regarding can a nation be truly sovereign in its regard to food sovereignty, just with our history and how that kind of played a role in us not really succeeding, but having to kind of fall in line. I think whenever we get to the point where we do projects and actual initiatives like food sovereignty, growing our own food, producing our own food, whether that's even buffalo or cattle, then we can be sovereign, because historically, that's how we were kind of starved into submission to comply with a relationship with the federal government that never served us but took advantage of us. I do see us becoming sovereign, and that's ultimately the goal, right? Is to not be so reliant on federal grant funding that is very questionable, especially in the time we're in now. And that's what I'm glad Isaiah brought that up, because that's something, like I said, the administration at the tribal level, because we operate in like not really two different types of governments, but the district level is the people level specifically. That's where the people meet, and we can provide our own solutions. But we report to our tribal government, which is the tribe, Standing Rock Sioux tribe. And we're not a separation of powers. We're more like a delegation of powers at the district level. So we can be a district sovereign, and that's kind of what Chairman wants, and his vision for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is for the districts, the communities, to practice their sovereignty and go after their projects, their businesses, create their own resources, their own food supply, things like that, their own businesses, so on and so forth, because ultimately the tribal government has to deal with those larger scale issues of federal relationships and kind of industry across Standing Rock, right? But yeah, so I think when we get there, then we can truly start exercising our sovereignty as a nation. And it starts with our food, like we've been saying. And so we don't have to kind of not really repeat the same mistake, but, and which we know was systematic. We were very reliant on the buffalo. And once the buffalo were slaughtered and massacred, that's kind of what affected us the most, because we were so subsistent on that source. So I think once we start, bringing and prioritizing food sovereignty, then we can truly exercise our full sovereignty as a district and tribal nation, because again, we don't want to be kind of starved out. And we've seen that with the SNAP freeze kind of reignited the purpose, I would say, kind of reinforced the need to provide for our own, because that's where it was, we joke at the tribal level, like that in the chairman's cabinet, that we weren't expecting to come in and inherit a state of emergency for a federal freeze and actually have our people experience food insecurity. But we did, we did the best we could. We relied on our old practices. Chairman had a few buffaloes harvested for the district for distribution, and funding was allocated. But more importantly, our local grocery store even felt the effects, because that's where they get a lot of business at the grocery store from SNAP recipients, so they even felt it. So it even made us kind of come more together as a community here. The mayor of the city of McLaughlin actually is an owner of the local grocery store. So it's been a really good relationship with her and I, and her kind of being a leader of the city council of, we're all community. We're all one. We all live amongst each other. There shouldn't be these hard boundaries, we should try to be good neighbors to each other and support each other. So, but I think the way that I kind of see and the potential that my district has specifically is that. So currently the grocery store that I just talked about, we have a grocery store here in the district, in the city. They're actually looking to get out of the business, and they've been very vocal about the tribe being first kind of dibs at the business, so that we can keep that business local and really provide for our people. And that's where I see this community garden initiative coming in, is being the supply for that grocery store. And on the district side, that's something that we've been talking about a lot lately, is the people see that we have lands that we're not taking advantage of, and we need to start taking advantage of them, and we need to start providing opportunity and just outlets. So community gardening has been at the forefront of the people's mind for since I came into this role. And, that also helps with the, because we don't have to do a lot, it's when I think people get discouraged whenever there's a lot of work that has to be done, but something as simple as community gardens kind of gives that responsibility back to the people. And I think that's exactly what we need now. Like I said, my district, we struggle with substance abuse. That's our largest barrier right now is addiction and substance abuse. I mean, there's a lack of housing. The roads are bad, but ultimately the biggest issue is substance abuse in the home. And right now, on a day-to-day basis, working with the people and being kind of that first layer of government, it's been tough. The people want to sober up, and they'll go to treatment, they'll take advantage of the resources that are there, but the issue is coming back to the same thing, to the same behaviors and the same addiction, ultimately, with no other outlets but to do that, it seems like. So daily, I'm being asked for day labor opportunities to just not only, help provide an income to get, their personal items and, continue to try to keep their house running. But a lot of them come for day labor just to do something different, to stay sober. And they're very transparent when they they say that to me, I'm trying to stay sober. And so what do we do? You know what I mean? What do we do? Right now has been hard in the winter time because there's not a lot of district work, more or less. We're really small. So I'm looking forward to the spring, summertime where we'll have projects such as community gardens that will allow the people to, heal, connect with the land, be a part of something that is bigger, because I see there's a lot of problems that are amongst the people, but there's a lot of potential too. They're just looking for an outlet. They're looking for direction, purpose, and motivation. And something that I will say that I think sometimes kind of goes lost in translation, and kind of something that people don't give too much credit to, is the fact that it don't matter what type of person you are, whether you're into government here or you're struggling in addiction or whatever. We're all relatives, so therefore we all want to take care of each other some type of way. We want to give back and be a part of contributing, and that's where I'm at with my leadership style, is how can the people contribute to our society, because that's where we come from. Traditionally, we were very responsible and we all contributed to the society. We supported each other communally, and that's what we want to get back to. And I think projects such as this, when we talk about food sovereignty, will provide the people with purpose to be active and be an active contributor. So I do foresee, and that's ultimately the goal, is to exercise our tribal sovereignty, and we need to start with food sovereignty first, so that way we don't repeat history. Yeah, and like I said, potential-wise, my district is the hub agriculturally. We have a railroad system. There's multiple grazing units and farm pasture and agricultural land units that are available and not being used around us. The district, we have land as well. We have an orchard out by a subsection of our community called Bear Soldier South. There's land out there that usually is just grown corn for the ethanol production. But like I said, we want to move forward with food sovereignty and growing food for our people. And then something that's been long overdue, but the tribe has a food distribution program that's funded through the Department of Ag. And we've only ever had one location. At the agency location on Standing Rock is in Fort Yates, North Dakota. So right now there's been a huge push to expand government service to the south side, Bear Soldier specifically, because we're the hub. We have, like I said, all those things. We have a grocery store, we have a bank that is city and private owned, but there's potential there. We also currently, there's a second location that is set to open in May this year for the food distribution program. And it's right in our sub community in Bear Soldier South. And we're sharing that space with the food distribution program and the district and the nutrition for elderly program as well. And then it's supposed to also serve as a community incident command center in case of an emergency. So that's a place that the people can go. But there's community garden space in there as well. So we've been also talking about opportunity of not only providing fresh produce through these community gardens to our people, through the district avenues, but there's also a potential for the grocery stores and the food distribution program itself to kind of purchase this produce to distribute in their monthly distributions of the people that are within that program. Yeah. And then the next goal for us at the district level is not only community gardens, but we ultimately are looking towards, a buffalo herd here in the district. Because again, the SNAP freeze it didn't scare us. Ultimately, it kind of revealed what the issues were, and instead of harping on them, how can we prepare ourselves so that if this were to happen again, which we should always, as tribal nations, be prepared for that, of federal funding being political and not so reliant. So how can we prepare ourselves to be proactive so that we don't take our people back to a time in history where we starved ultimately and we had to survive? So the work that we do here is ultimately for that sovereignty and to be able to thrive, not survive anymore as a people. So
exactly. Yeah, no, that's because without the foundation of that real leadership, the next people could come in and just could be all destroyed because there wasn't a foundation. And it seems like what you're building right now is that foundation of true leadership. And you will be an example for a lot of tribes, because I don't really see any tribes. They are doing that, more pointing the finger and being like, why did you take our federal money, instead of being like, okay, this is opening our eyes to the fact that we were reliant on the federal government for our food, and now we need to switch it and be reliant on ourselves. So ultimately, this leadership is what the next generation needs to keep this going. Otherwise, it will just fall through. As you said, like when you were growing up, things seemed to be better. I don't know who was in charge then, but at some point there was something happened where, and maybe that's the population drop.
It was the non-natives,
right?
Yeah, so they were the ones that were creating business.
Okay, so then now it's just kind of.
Now it's tribal.
Well, now it's just an open field for everyone to be like ideas and what the community needs. Because a lot of those businesses probably left because the community didn't need those businesses. Yeah. So it's like.
And more often, that's where we start though, as a district. I was joking around about that earlier, but we're the district on Standing Rock, I would say, where we look at ourselves first. And that's really hard to do. It's really hard to look at ourselves and kind of not really call out our relatives, but you need to be accountable to all of us. When we live together, we all need to be accountable to each other. So not only are we looking at those levels of state and federal and holding them accountable, but we're starting with us first at the district level, and then the tribal council level, and then so on and so forth. But that work does start here. So it's been a lot of tough conversations, truthfully, because some of the people don't want to talk about what their family's doing, but that work is necessary so we can move forward together. I think that's trauma that our people operate in, is like we feel like justice always has to be like very punitive and like very like legal and harsh, whenever in reality we were always more of like restorative justice people, where you make it back whole. You know what I mean? And that could look different. That could look like community service. That can look like just a hard conversation with your family, or that can look like, tribal court mediation. But the difference is we're not aiming for anyone to be hurt in that justice. We're aiming for it to be whole again. So it's been tough work having to look at ourselves and figure out what that looks like, but we're doing it. And it's because, again, we want different. We want to begin to live, not just survive here anymore.
Yeah, and it takes all these leaderships in the community to step up, including places like Seeds of Eden. Isaiah, how can land-based knowledge in this, this infrastructure that we're creating together, how can that support youth mental health, recovery, and then resilience?
One thing that came to my mind here just maybe a minute ago when Bobbi was talking was kind of this systematic need for training and education, and that ties into leadership, that ties into business development. People can't really do what they don't know how to do, and so it's a humbling experience to ask for help, but I think that's where, as we all come together, we can each bring kind of a piece of the puzzle to make this work. And so, when it comes to food sovereignty, there's a lot of education that needs to be administered on that. Jonathan, you've been really helpful in bringing some of that. When we're talking about this on a deeper level, we're talking about soil samples. We're talking about nitrate levels, which you educated me on today about. We're talking about a lot of different areas, and it's scientific, it's spiritual, it's cultural, it's economic. It literally hits on all levels of the spectrum. So as the community gets educated on it and they begin to appreciate it, they're going to buy in. Once they buy in, that'll spur economic ideas, that'll spur leadership capabilities. And so it really is, it's an exponential growth model, which really people don't even understand how powerful that actually is, especially when you're growing the food for yourself first and then for others. And one of the things that, this is a totally different topic, but when we talk about restoring trade routes, right, between tribes, I mean, you think about, one tribe has bison, but another tribe has fish. Why not trade with each other? Simple things like that can be really a powerful economic stimulant for the local economy, for the tribes. So I really foresee, a lot of leadership coming out of these initiatives. We have another site in Fort Yates. It's actually at the county extension office, and I was able to speak with the leaders there about a year ago, and they informed me that it would be open to whomever wants to develop it and restore it. That was basically a community garden at one point. It's got a chain link fence around it. There's old greenhouses there. There's watering hoses. It needs some updates and some upgrades. But why not? Why not develop that? And so we're living in a time where there's more opportunities than there ever has been with some of these things and rethinking how we need to do business. And as people wake up, as leaders kind of emerge to challenge the status quo and kind of to challenge that established mindset where, we're going to rely on SNAP or we're going to rely on so-and-so for our needs, all of that needs to change, and it's changing. These conversations are really powerful because it gets the heart and soul of what we're doing out into the public eye, and that'll spur even more ideas and more growth. So yeah, I see multiple layers, multiple levels of opportunity. And it's going to be neat because it starts with someone burying their fingers in the dirt and planting and harvesting. And honestly, I just have this vision in my mind of people driving by and seeing that and just, being so impacted because there's so much devastation, as Bobbi had mentioned. There's so much death, there's so much disease. And when you look at, South Dakota, for example, on a state level, state officials recognize that there's problems going on, and I think that perhaps for the first time in a long time, they're willing to help support that, not come and take over, not tell us what to do, but actually just open up the conversation and say, hey, what are your ideas? The state has resources. Why not tap into that if we can? Doesn't mean we're going to rely on that 24/7. But anyone willing to give a helping hand and a springboard is a huge blessing. It's a huge benefit. And that's kind of what Seeds of Eden's working on even right now. I won't release all of the details, but we are working with the state of South Dakota on a pretty neat initiative for recovery housing and establishing some really neat infrastructure that'll affect other reservations in South Dakota as well. So we're actually at a point where we're literally mining any area that we can possibly get into. Any foundation, any investor, any state agency, any tribal agency, any nonprofit that is willing to help. we're willing to work with them. So I like that because I come from a background, a very state oriented, or, maybe non-native is the right word for it, oriented behavioral health business model where it's very much competitive. A lot of it's driven by greed and by money, not by the community, not for the community. And that causes a lot of problems, and it's really destroying a lot of our existing systems and providers. And it's something that I've always rejected. But this is a whole different model, this collaborative, this working together. There's enough to go around. We don't need to try to hoard it, hog it, steal it, none of that. Plenty of resources, there's plenty of food, and there's plenty of money for all of us to share and to build something beautiful for the people.
Yeah, as we know, the community, it can't build itself alone. Here in the Bear Soldier District, this work is happening alongside partners including Seeds of Eden, Western Hemisphere Indigenous Network, Next Level Collaborations, Kimco, and Board Shaper are tech partners, each supporting different pieces of the land restoration, mental health, and long-term infrastructure. Bobbi, it seems like when collaboration is working well, it feels supportive rather than directive. Like partners are strengthening what's already here rather than trying to shape it. And Isaiah, from the partner side, and for myself, the goal is really to support the district's vision, not replace it. I think that's in the past, a lot of partnerships, somebody wants to run it under their thing. And what we need to shift into is the community is the voice. Wherever we go, we're going to make sure that the community has what it needs. And that's what's going to make this work. So as this continues to grow, what kind of partners are you looking for, Bobbi? And we have the mental health, the tech, the district, the food. And you were speaking about Bison being a part of this. Maybe we had somebody reach out in a different district about a horse therapy, different things like that. What kind of partners are you looking for moving forward?
I would say anybody I'm more than willing to meet with any organization. And if you align with the goals or we're like-minded per se, then I'm always willing to listen, learn, and figure out how something could fit in the puzzle. I don't really have, kind of like a set template of what we're going to do. There's so much, as a district, not only do we want to create, I think that's just what we want to do in general, just create, with respect to the land first and foremost, and then deeply connected to our Lakota values, traditional values, and any organization that shares those and comes with, understanding of who we are, so that we're not constantly trying to over-explain or, fight for our seat at the table, more or less. But we're looking forward to any collaboration in the district, really. Again, we're in the space of development right now, and building and creating. I think just the hard kind of standard with that is just, again, respect for all living things, and especially the land. Like, no, we're not really in the business of, big tech here on Standing Rock, but we do want to develop, agriculturally and, reliant in respect to all living things, especially, our plant relatives and, Buffalo Nation, all those things. But ultimately, what we're looking for right now is to completely rebuild. I look around at my community and district and see nothing but potential. We're talking community gardens, food sovereignty, that initiative where community gardens and a buffalo herd, would fit in. But then we're also talking economic development. We want to start creating business that not only serves the community first and helps us meet our needs, but we also want to expand, to larger scale production, more or less. Here on the reservation, we do have the agriculture to work from specifically first. And what we're interested in my district specifically is hemp and cannabis, that those industries haven't really took off yet here on Standing Rock, but that's of huge interest of my district and the people. And again, it just goes back on our respect for Unchimaka and what she can provide for us. And I think that's ultimately the business we're in. And then, of course, meeting the needs such as housing. That's another big issue that we need to start talking about further, is creating more housing here in the district, because believe it or not, we do have a housing issue. There's a lot of overcrowding is what we face right now. And what we see from that overcrowding is our generation not really having that chance to own a home, make a home, whatnot like that. But we're the adults now, so we need to do those things. And then, of course, just meet the needs of our demographics here, the youth. We don't have much for them, but something that we're working on currently is a district herd of horses to give our kids and our youth and just people opportunity to do things that our culture has always done. So there's a push as well for it to reconnect to the culture and language. So we're starting up some activities for that, and just make it more accessible, because I think what we've experienced for a long time is, we were just talking about this the other day about how our culture and language isn't necessarily gate kept, or it's not, they're like gatekeepers of it. It's just there was an era there where it was so discouraged that it couldn't be practiced or even talked. It went underground for a very long time. And just that trauma that I think our elders experienced, to where they don't know that, they should be sharing it, that it's okay now, because it's just, there's a lot of trauma that our people operate from, that they don't understand necessarily that they're operating out of, and it's influencing their, proactiveness to society. But so some other projects that we were talking about is just, creating a gym here, a wellness center for the people as a whole. I think what you said earlier, Jonathan, about how, this work really does need that lived experience, to be impactful, and I guess to create and sustain that passion that it takes to carry out, because it's hard work. And if you don't have the passion, sometimes it's easy to just get up and be like, you're not going to do it, but if you lived through it and you came out of it, then you have that passion to wake up every day and at least do something, chip away at, even if it's just the smallest task towards that work. And I went through my own journey when I was in the Army, and thankfully I had resources there, endless resources that were given to me. So it's just creating those type of resources and outlets here for the people, to include mental health services, addiction and substance abuse services, sober living, but then that wellness portion where we talk about working with the land, but also moving your body, working out. We're really big into basketball. That's something you will always see the kids out doing every night, is hooping, even if it's cold, they'll be out at the courts, playing basketball. And there's been an influx of interest for boxing. So that's another project. The district, we're kind of blessed because we do have a little bit of inventory regarding space-wise. So it's just, providing those updates and renovations and actually opening them to the people and to the generations that we have. And then, of course, the older generations, we just need more jobs, employment opportunities. So hopefully that's kind of the goal that I'm looking at whenever I talk, a buffalo herd, or even getting into the ag business, such as, producing corn, and maybe an agreement with the Integra, for workforce development, heavy equipment, operators, so on and so forth. We just need to really create opportunity here in Bear Soldier for the people, so that they can start living amongst each other in a good way and being a good relatives to each other. So
and that opens up the door for the college to start sending students to learn about agriculture, and even create their own field for study and in the college. And then for the elementaries, all those schools can start visiting these places to learn. It just creates its own community, and then its own business as well, where the community can start making money, because we obviously all need to still be able to pay our bills and keep the lights on and stuff. For everyone listening, this this collaboration, this partnership. My organization is Indigenous. I work with the Next Level Collaborations. It's a women's owned, operated nonprofit, partners at Kimco Solutions. It's a women's owned operation out of Minnesota. And then Seeds of Eden is a non-Indigenous organization as well. So it is all of the communities coming together. And unfortunately, it does take, there's not a lot of people who have that mindset, who live that experience, who can come together and create what we're creating. So for those of you listening, if you go on Western Hemisphere Indigenous Network.com, I do have a collaboration tab that you can, because like I said, we have a few other, a horse, a bison, and I know a lot of listeners, they have access to those things and have the potential of even maybe giving some in-kind donations of their own to get this started. So I want to thank Bobbi Jamerson for welcoming us here at the Bear Soldier District and sharing the vision of what's being built, not just for today, but for the future. And I want to thank you as well, Isaiah, with Seeds of Eden, for being a part of this conversation and the ongoing work connecting land, healing, and food sovereignty. Those three that's the base, that's the foundation, because those three will bring us into our language, into our culture, and into, better system of living, really back to what our ancestors were living. It's 2026 now. Obviously, there's technology, there's stuff that we need to work around. But I think this is the start, and we have to, start somewhere. It's clear that this work is about more than projects. It's about strengthening community through land, wellness, and self-determination. So thank you both for your time and continue to work moving forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on, Jonathan. I look forward to more opportunities in the future and continuing to update on this work and working together. So, Doksha.
Thanks, Jonathan. Looking forward to the next time we're able to just sit down and visit.